First question is, how has your approach to tuition costs and post-secondary education funding changed since the last election?
Still in the developmental stage of where we're headed and what we're going to present to Nova Scotians in an election campaign. One of the things, though, as a province that we need to do is begin to recognize that universities as an asset in this province, not a liability. Recognize the economic component associated with that, and it needs to be funded in that way. Tremendous opportunity, particularly in research and development, that we can link the private sector and universities, bring new revenue in, which in turn will help control the escalating costs of tuition. Equally important for this province is that the national government recognizes that funding post-secondary education should be based on where the student is attending university, not the province to which where that student was born.
How do you view the NDP's approach to post-secondary education funding?
Well, I've been disappointed in the sense that there's a reduction over the period of time of $100 million of university funding, seen as a liability, and I don't think it's been seen as the asset to which our universities are. But I don't think the NDP government has recognized that as our economy transitions, it will be the educational capital that we have as a province that will actually set us apart from other areas and allow us to actually grow the economy that's required. So where I think we differ, and it's really looking at the universities as an asset. It's one that you would invest and cultivate, and how do you collaborate from the private sector to public sector to make those things, to reach their full potential, where the government sees them more as a liability and trying to balance the books and where can we reduce, what can we cut, as opposed to the opposite to that.
What would the NDP need to do to rectify this?
Well, I don't know if they can. I think they've created such a level of, I don't want to say distrust, but I think they've already set a standard of where they're going with, instead of working in collaboration with post-secondary institutions, they're seeing them as a negative.
Yesterday, Dexter said to one of my colleagues, lower tuition isn't the answer, and instead pointed to debt caps, zero interest, and tax credits to put students ahead. What do you make of that?
There's no question it's a challenge. I mean, many families in this province are raising children on less than $40,000 a year, and yet when you're a young person looking to go to university and recognizing your student debt could be more than your family income, it's hard to comprehend. It's hard to wrap your head around the fact that that's achievable, that's attainable. Access always has to be at the forefront of any decision that government makes. This grant program that the Premier was talking about in itself sounds wonderful, and for those who are accessing it is very good for them. But if you don't have a job, what good is a tax credit? And on top of that, many Nova Scotians, many Canadians who are leaving and working in this province after post-secondary education has such a debt load that they have enough write-offs to actually make a difference. I would like to be able to say, is there a better way to be able to engage the private sector, or quite frankly public institutions, but the private sector particularly, to say, is there a way for us to work with the employer on the tax credit side to be able to hire a new grad to give the job, to be able to support them partway through through the university? Is there a way to make it kind of enhance a co-op program where they're able to earn some money as they're going through? At the same time, you're trying to control that university costs.
You just mentioned accessibility. What would your government do to increase accessibility for students who may not be able to afford post-secondary education?
Well, one of the things that we've been looking at, and again, we'll go back to it, we haven't laid out a platform. One of the things that we need to focus on is income-based, making sure that if you're in a situation where your parents do not have the capacity to support you, to provide, to be your assistance, is there a grant program that would work? Is there other avenues that would allow accessibility to be at the forefront of this? The things that we need to also be careful of. We've spent a lot of time focused on tuition, but it's a part of the puzzle. When you look at a young person's debt load after university, obviously people will move here from a national point of view, and students need to drive this as well. And we need their help to tell the federal government that university funding should not be attached to the province to where you're born. That funding that's associated with every Canadian student should go to the province where they're educated. So if my children decide to go to Ontario to be educated, then the national funding for my children should go to Ontario. But on the flip side, if the Ontario children come here, or anywhere in Canada, the funding associated with that should come here, not back to the province of their birth.
Do you think the government should become involved in setting limits for university administration costs?
I think government always has a role because we're a funding partner. Government has a role. But you also have to respect the independence to a certain extent too. I think looking at parameters around that, conjunction, in collaboration with universities, as it would make sense. For government to come in and say, this is what you're going to do, I think it takes away some of the independence that makes our universities unique and makes them each individual.
Would setting parameters be something your government would consider?
Well, yeah, it definitely would be something we'd be looking at and setting some guidelines around it. My experience has been with the university presidents I've spoken with and talked to at different times. They look forward to those.